previously on Supa-Saturdays Draw Along.
That's why I love to draw, and I wanna create Supa-Saturdays, 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 draw along.
Hello there, boys and girls, and ladies and gentlemen, of course. Welcome to another episode of Supa-Saturdays Draw Along with me, Jerome Hinds. I'll be here for about the next hour and a half, going through a tutorial of how to draw. And we've been here for a few months now, and we're currently working on what I call Clash of the Goliaths. So what does all that mean? Let's have a closer look. I make me small, make it big. So if you were here last week, remember we were constructing Goliath from, I think, the late 1960s Avengers versus Black Goliath, who came about in 1970s. And I was doing this as a study in confrontation and two characters about to fight or in the middle of a fight. So now I've had a time away from the drawing. I'd like to look at a few things here. First thing is, remember, I'm working digitally. So when you're working digitally, if you're not working on paper, what must you always do? You must always
save.
Always remember to save. And we're sketching at the moment. For those regular viewers, what do I always say when we're sketching?
Keep those pencils light.
Absolutely. And we don't like to procrastinate. What must you do? Just
do it.
Absolutely correct. So here we have the Clash of the Goliaths. Now, where you are, the time in the US, East Coast now is 6 p.m. I'm coming to you from Singapore. It is 7 a.m. here. So if I sound a bit dodgy, it's because I've only been away for an hour plus. And I got a bit of flu. What a sad man, eh? Can't even take a bit of flu. Feeling a bit rough. So here, now that I've had some time away from the drawing, there's a few things that I'd like to change. If you're working at home, traditionally, what I mentioned before, keep those pencils light and we can make these changes easier. I'm working in layers, what I call layer etiquette. So let's just look at the first Goliath. Now that I've come back to this drawing after 1 week, I think this arm is a little bit too large and too high. So I'm going to take it down in size. How did I do that? I drew a marquee around it with the lasso tool. I'm going to take it down. I think that is better. I prefer that. Deselect. So what did we just do? We changed the skeleton. We fleshed it out. I changed all the layers. Then we found our center lines, our dimensions, where our corners are, fronts and backs. We put in the contours to make sure we know the direction of every part of the body. Then we did the detail. So now we're to the second Goliath. So where's he in proximity? He's here. Let me turn down these other layers so we can see the first Goliath a bit more clearly. I duplicated that layer so we can see it more clearly. I'm going to switch that one off. Right. So again, they always say hindsight is 50-50. My name being Jerome Hinds does have that effect sometimes. I think the second Goliath is a little bit small. So I've grouped all my layers and I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. He is actually closer to the camera, of course, right? And I'm going to move him a little bit closer to our first Goliath. There. A bit more up and close. Ready for some fighting. Good. So where were we? We are now putting the detail. Remember, skeletons, fleshing out, centerline, dimensions, contours, then detail. We're just putting the detail in on Black Goliath. We started at the head. So let me zoom in. Now let me check that I've still got my time lapse going. Time lapse, yeah, it's recording. Looking at this, I've made the decision that I want his mouth to be wider. So I'm going to open his mouth. Wider. Which of course is going to make his chin drop. So let's get rid of this detail. Let's zoom in, get in tight, tight like a tiger. Good. Now I want him to be quite aggressive. I'm going to put clasping teeth. Get rid of this. And right there. Now we take this cheek out because we now prolong the face. And we put the expression on the nose here. Now I'm actually working at 300 dots per inch. And it looks a little bit low because I can't get in my detail. Okay, this is better. It's more of an expression that I want. Now Black Goliath is wearing a mask. So let's put in the eye sockets. I drew through the object. I drew the eyes as if the mask wasn't there. In hindsight, I look at the original design of the mask from the 1970s, and it's a little bit higher than what we've got here. So I'm going to take that mask out. And Black Goliath has what we call a widow's peak. His hair comes down and it goes back up. It's not exactly an afro, it's a little bit shorter than an afro. Good, I see we've got a few people watching us. Greetings, thank you for joining me on this episode. It's episode 21, I think it is. Black Goliath has got that classic Captain America mask design where his ears are actually exposed. Put some expression. Good. Now we're doing the detail. So now this is where we will buff him up, if at all. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make that bicep a bit more chunky. And that tricep. Bring that down to the elbow. Well, we haven't actually really put his costume in yet. He's got one seriously retro costume, man. That's half the reason why I did this, actually, you know. These old school costumes, man. I'm sorry. I'm a boomer. But what can I say? What can I say? So we've got the chest muscle. See, we've got the center of the body here depicted. So the chest muscle comes in here. We need this because a costume design, you can gauge it against the anatomy, the surrounding anatomy. So we come around the back here, up underneath there. And the costume, it's got like a cutout piece. Now, different artists draw it differently. I've seen artists draw the cutout even coming up to the chest area, which is well retro. Good. He's got good old trusty pants outside and a belt. You don't get more superhero than that, son. I can tell you. Good. Let's put some abs in. And some ribs. Now, again, with the benefit of hindsight, I want more of a dip in this fist. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to grab this fist there with a lasso. Control T for transform, and I'm going to angle that fist more like this. Shift it down slightly. Now, do I prefer that? Yes, I do prefer that. Yeah, I prefer that. So now we connect up the detail as we're doing it. Now, Black Goliath has certain properties a la Captain America. Those gloves come off the arm. I'm going to put a few wrinkles in there. Then come in. Get that elbow defined. Good. Come down to the wrist. Now, my favorite comic artist of all time, Gil Kane. The way he would draw fists would absolutely blow my mind. So here, what you always get is, there's the knuckles. Okay, get your knuckles in. We went through that with the skeleton. And here's the middle finger, ring finger, middle finger. That curls around the back here. But then we raise that index finger. I love the way Gil Kane used to do that. Then we see the thumb coming from below. I think my wrist is a bit out of position there. Let's move that wrist back a bit. Good. No, is my music too loud? Let me check. It sounds loud, but I've only got it at 15. Let me take it down to 10. Let me take it down to 10. Is that too quiet? I've got it at 12. If it's too quiet or too loud, please do drop me a comment and I shall adjust accordingly. Because I'm here to please. Because I'm such a great guy. So now let's get to this other bicep. It's behind. Tricep behind us. I'm bulking him up on the detail. On this detail section. I'm bulking up our Black Goliath. Now here, foreshortening. Okay, guys, if you're watching at home, guys and gals, foreshortening is, I would say, generally speaking, the most difficult part of drawing superheroes from imagination. What you've got to really make sure you do is hug the cylinder of the limb or the body or whatever part of the body you're drawing. Make sure that you really get the volume in. Can you see underneath? Remember the contours that we did? This is why, if you're not sure about your drawing, put in your contours. It can help you really, really gauge what's going on with the costume. Good. So now we come in for the fist. There's our raised finger again. I'm going to pull that out slightly. Knuckles. Ring finger. Now, I've got something I'd like to talk about something that I think we all have, which is an artistic footprint. There are things that we all are prone to do that could be good, or can be bad. Now, part of my artistic footprint is that I have a habit of drawing index fingers too large as compared to the middle finger. You know, the middle finger is the largest of all the fingers, right? So therefore, your index finger should never be bigger than your ring finger. And I'm very guilty of doing that sometimes. Very guilty. Now, Black Panther. Goodness, I call him Black Panther. Not Black Panther, Black Goliath. His shoulders are covered, but not his biceps. Remember the window I mentioned? There's like a window cut out on his costume. There. He's got the Captain America gloves. I'm going to switch off our Goliath that's behind. Now look at me. Look at my layer etiquette. I'm talking so big about layer etiquette, and I'm not even practicing it. What I should do is, you see my layers over here. You can see me on the layer palette, correct? I should be collecting all of these, putting them into a folder, and call it, this is the first Goliath. His name was just simply Goliath. So now all my Goliath, let me zoom out so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's Goliath in one folder. Now I'm going to put Black Goliath's layers in another folder. Call that Black Goliath, because I'm so creative. And now he's in a separate folder. That's as much easier to control. Now, I don't want to get confused by my original Goliath, so I'm going to switch him off. Switch him off. I'm going to switch off those details and concentrate on Black Goliath here. So I'm going to go, ladies and gentlemen, you're getting a rare treat this morning. I'm going full Silver Age. Normally, I'm from the school of Jim Starlin. And what does the school of Jim Starlin do? Well, what they normally do is you draw the pants outside extremely tight and extremely high, like Speedos. But this morning, I'm going to go Jack Kirby. Well, this evening to you, if you're in the States. If you're in the UK, what's that be? Good night. If you're in Europe. But I'm going full Jack Kirby and I'm lowering those pants. How about that? Such a great guy. No, if I put his belt a bit low, I probably have. That's not very Silver Age. You see? That's my Bronze Age coming out. So I'm going to hire that belt. Raise that belt, son. There's that belt gone up. Few inches. And we can see the center of the body here. And there's a pattern at the side of the belt. We're going to see one part of that there. Yeah, look at those Jack Kirby-esque kind of pants. Splendid. Now, time for some anatomy. Getting that knee in. Now, there's a serious swing in the body here. This is very Gil Kane indeed. Very Gil Kane. Now, Black Goliath has Captain America boots. So I'm going full retro this morning, man. I got some things in my mind here. Really showing my age. Now, there's a great artist from the Silver and Bronze Age, whose name was Gene Colan. And Gene Colan drew the best Captain America boots you're ever going to see in your life. Now, why is his Captain America boots the best? I hear you asking. Because they were huge. That man would draw some seriously big boots, man. And I'm going to do the same thing here this morning. Like real Pirates of the Caribbean kind of big. Now, look at me. I've got my contours and I'm not following my contours. I can't do it like Gene Colan, you know. I don't know how that man did it. But his boots were so big. And a few guys came along. Jim Starlin had some pretty big Captain America boots when he drew Captain America. And Gil Kane also did a good big boot on Cap. So I'm going full Pirates of the Caribbean here. People are going to say, well, Jerome, that boot's much too big. You know what? I like it. Good. So now we have the boot coming at the bottom. What we just did, what we always talk about, we drew through the object. Now we've got the boot coming out the bottom. And I'm going to square this boot off slightly. Now that's what you call a Jim Starlin foot. I'm going to have to do some sound effects, you know. So I don't have to keep saying Jim Starlin or Gil Kane. You'll just hear, Gil Kane! Then you know I'm doing something similar or trying to do something similar to Gil Kane. Or if you hear, Starlin! You know I'm in a Jim Starlin mode. Did you see my computer stalling there? It was saving. Because I'm doing a time lapse. And that takes up a few resources. Okay, see, I was always going to make that foot smaller, you know. But nah, Gene Colan wouldn't have a small foot there. He'd stick with a big foot. Okay, come to the inside of this leg. Let's drop in our boot first. Now, just how low did we put those boots? Pretty low. Somewhere around here. So you've got to make sure that your costume matches up, symmetrical. Now, you've also got the inertia of the body that can affect. Look at that. I've got even more Gene Colan on this boot. That's bigger than the first boot. Calm down, boy. Calm down. Don't get too excited. All right. I'll shrink my boot slightly. I'll shrink it slightly. That's because I'm a compromising guy. A lot of Gene Colan clones would not have shrunk that boot. But we've got to keep things civil. I could make it bigger, but I'd have to go and change the other boot. And we're here for 1.5 hours. And I want to finish this, at least, the main penciling today. I think I'm going to take this right through. We're going to go all the way through to coloring. Inking and coloring. So we're still at the pencil stage here. So let's see how are these boots matching up? I've got too much inertia here. Let me take down that inertia there. Get rid of this. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, man. Now, I've gone from Gene Colan to Jim Starlin. This boot is looking a bit Jim Starlin-esque. Okay, let's get back to this leg. So let's find where the knee is. There's the center of the foot. Now that is what you call a Gil Kane knee. Well, Jerome, do you draw anything like yourself? I hear you asking yourself. I say, yes, I do. But for some reason, I'm in a bit of a schizo mood today. I'm going full silver in Bronze Age. Actually, I'm just kidding myself. Those guys drew stuff in a way, right? I am still nowhere near that class. What really worries me is the way how Gil Kane could draw horses. I mean, what animals? My animal game is not there. I don't draw a lot of animals. You know, I always said that I would like to draw a Western comic. You know, Western, as in the Wild West. One thing that I will pat myself on the back. They say self-praise is no praise. But I also acknowledge my faults. And I'm not scared of a challenge. I will try to draw something that I am not experienced in. The only way you can really improve is to get out of your comfort zone. Okay, so there is Black Goliath. So let's drop in our Goliath. So what is it time for? We got to end stage, end games, end stage of something. So we
Save.
damn right. So we penciled in. Oh, hang on a second. Look at this. I'm guilty of going into other stages when I haven't finished the last stage yet. Hang on. Black Goliath. He's got some funky colors on his costume, man. I was so looking forward to this that I forgot about it. Black Goliath has got legendary colors on his costume. Now, how do the colors sit? Now, it's going to take a bit of concentration because funny thing, when you got a character with bits of costume that can obscure the face, you got to draw that character wisely, right? Because you don't want to obscure the face. Now, his colors come up the side of his head and they go around the back of his, his costume comes up the side of his face and down the back of his head. So from here, and I don't want to cover his face. So how am I going to construct this collar? It attaches to the chest here. It's going to come up here. Now his head is sunken into his costume. So we got a bit of foreshortening going on here. The collar's going to come around the back of the head. So let's have a look. We put that here. This collar's going to be forced away because of his face. And we might see it coming up the other side here. So let's bring this up. We're coming from above. That's going to go up around the back of his head. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Flash Gordon. There's a guy called Ming the Merciless. And he's got some serious colors on his costume, if I'm not mistaken. And they're not that much different to Black Goliath's colors. And we see the inside of the collar there. And we see it again there. Now, can his face actually get in front of his collar from this angle? Yes, it could. And what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to go even more ridiculous. I'm going to drop this collar even more. Now, should I show the inside of the collar from this angle? You know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open the collar up. We cannot see the curve. So we get this. Because we are at the side. Good. Now we get this in here. We're going to see that collar is coming in here. We see the inside of the collar. And the question is, just how far inside would we see? I would say about here. Let's go full me. Open that collar up, boy. Okay. Here's one funky brother. I'm going to open this mask up slightly as well. Bring it down the side of the jaw over here so we can get a bit more of his cheekbones going. Yes, that's better. Let's thicken his neck up. Make him a bit more Mike Tyson-esque. Good. Save. And I'm going to exaggerate that collar. I'm going to bring that down here. Round it off a bit. Put that there. Nice. Good for nice. Okay, now let's just check his anatomy. See if I've got any bits of detail that I want to put in. That would do. So now it's time for some rendering. Okay. So we did first Goliath first. So let's render Black Goliath. Oh, we got a few people watching. Welcome to Supa-Saturdays Draw Along with me, Jerome Hinds. I'm here from 6 to 7:30 Eastern Time. But I'm actually coming to you from the future because I'm in Singapore and the time here is currently 7:30 in the morning. So I'm coming to you from your future. And we're doing Clash of the Goliaths, I've called this piece. Clash of the Goliaths. It's Black Goliath versus original Goliath from the Marvel Universe. Recently, I did Giant Man, and who else? I did another Goliath and Giant Man. And after this, we're gonna do an exercise on Colossal Boy from the Legion of Superheroes. Colossal Boy, who the dickens is he? I hear you asking. Colossal Boy comes from as I said, from the Legion of Superheroes. And that guy has one of the coolest costumes you're ever gonna see. Now I'm a bit old school, I'm a bit out of date. The last time I was raving about Colossal Boy, it was the late 1980s. So I would be drawing the Colossal Boy, whose costume comes from that era. Now, I'm not sure what he did in the Legion of Superheroes in the 80s or 90s or beyond. I'm not even sure if it was continued. But the Legion of Superheroes had some fantastic characters back in the 70s and 80s. There was a period when it was done by a guy by the name of Mike Grell. And during that time, I was living in the UK, and me and a lot of my comic book friends, we were very Marvel. But I had a few friends that were also into DC. And they introduced me to DC via the Legion of Superheroes. And I always say, I actually believe that the biggest geeks are the DC collectors. I can tell you, we're all nerds, all right? We all accept that. But if you find a person is more DC than they are Marvel, that person is definitely full on nerd. As bad as you're gonna get. Well, okay, you saw that? I made his fist a bit bigger. Now, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls at home, if you're working traditionally, of course, you can't make a change like that as quickly. That's why I always tell you a certain instruction. I always say, what I always say? I always say,
Keep those pencils light.
indeed, because you never know when a change might be required. Okay, so now it's time for some rendering. And what I'm going to do, let me switch on other Goliath. I'm going to go a bit Jack Kirby here, and I'm going to take a light source from the center of the image, because their fight is going to be the source of light. I'm going to make the whole thing bigger. I'm enlarging everything. Can you see that? I'm filling my paper more. Now, you know what? I have to be honest. Drawing digitally can make you very lazy. When you're drawing traditionally, you're going to make sure that your characters and everything are in the right position. That's why I mentioned earlier that I don't mind a challenge. Yep. That's why I like when I get to a Comic Con or any kind of live event and people ask me for commissions, because that is paper and pencil. And if I don't get it right first time, I'm in full exposure. This doing stuff after the fact It is cheating. I don't like it. Right, but I just did it. I got the luxury of digital. Right now, first Goliath, this fist over here is looking a bit big. So with Clip Studio Paint, you see I've selected the folder. So that selects everything inside. Now Photoshop couldn't do this. Now I've not been using Photoshop for a while. I've got an old version of it, but I've not been using it. So I don't know if the update has actually changed that. Maybe you can grab everything in a folder now. If you can do that, drop me a note and say, well, Jerome Hinds, you're out of date. You can indeed select everything from a folder in Photoshop. Okay, good. So let's do some rendering. Now, Black Goliath, his costume is dark blue, yellow. And of course, his skin tone is brown. So let's come in here. Now, one thing that I don't like here, sorry, let's go back to our construction, is I think I need to put a bit more meat onto his throat area. There, that's better. Yes, that's better. So I'm going to put the rendering on a separate layer. So let's switch off Goliath. Let's make sure we understand what's going on here. We started with a skeleton. Let me make that full 100%. We started with a skeleton. Then we did the fleshing out. Then we found the center of all parts of the anatomy. We depicted that with a blue line. From that, we make sure we know where the sides of things are, what I call dimensions. If you like this kind of breakdown, I will show you a trailer later. I'm currently doing an art book for Thunder Zone Comics. We have a Kickstarter currently. And in there is also an offer of how to draw characters from the Thunder Zone. I've done quite a few characters for Thunder Zone over the years. And I go through this step-by-step methodology in that book. And we just reached the stretch goal. I'm having to add 4 more pages to it, which is great news. Then we get the contours. We make sure we know the direction of each part of the body. Yeah? So then we came to the detail. And on top of that, we did all of the detail. So now we can switch off the construction. And here's what we're left with. These are the basic pencils of Black Goliath. So now, on a separate layer, I'm going to call this spotting, where we put in the basic blacks. And again, I will color my layer like that. Again, I use Photoshop for many years, and I'm not sure that Photoshop can do that. You can change the color of a layer, but here you can actually select. You can select the color. Now, Black Goliath is dark blue, but he doesn't have that dark blue that's like the Black Panther, which is like full-on black. So I've got the light source coming from them, the center of the image. So immediately I'm going to drop in a piece of spotting here. And I'm rendering. Now, if you're drawing traditionally, I treat my drawing digitally very similarly to how I treat my drawing traditionally. And try to keep, when you're rendering, try to keep your rendering in one direction. What happens is, at the end of it, if you got all your rendering in one basic direction, the pencils come out looking smoother, look nicer. And if you're selling original artwork, you know, anyone who's going to come and buy your stuff, they would of course prefer nice pencils. So if you keep those pencils in one direction, it will look nicer. Then here, I'm going to take the hatching in that direction. Now, remember we did hatching recently? I explained that I was hatching in a particular way for many years, and then, which I call spikes. That's when you go from dark to light via the spikes going out of the spotting into the light, into the white area. But in later years, I found myself adopting what I dubbed the gradation style, which is more towards the way a lot of the artists rendered from the Image Comic Company. I still do my spikes style, but spiking does take longer than gradation. So I'm going in full render here. Now, because I'm inking this, normally speaking, when I'm inking myself, I don't really pencil this tight. Of course, because I know what I'm going to do with the inks. But this is Supa-Saturdays draw long. I'm going to assume that you are penciling, and maybe you're not going to be the inker, which means you need to be putting in enough information that you do not annoy your inker, or dare I say, your editor. So here, I'm going to put in a shadow here. If there's anyone out there that's watching that would like to have a go at inking my pencils, please do drop a note in the message or get a message out to Madness Entertainment Group, and I will send a pencils file to you, and you can show us here at Madness Entertainment Group what you got. Can you handle the inking? That would be the question. I never forget that movie with Chris Rock, where he accused an inker of being a tracer. Oh God, that is so funny. You're a tracer. What was the name of that movie? More Rats? Was it More Rats? It was a Jay and Silent Bob movie. Oh, that was so funny. He's a tracer. I'm going to put a shadow in those boots. You know, I look back at some of the old drawing from the Bronze and Silver Age guys, and a lot of that stuff, right, doesn't have a lot of detail, you know. But when you look at it, you kind of think that it does, but it doesn't. They were so good, you know, those guys. Absolute minimalists. Now, Black Goliath has yellow boots. I was always wondering, right, if they made a Black Goliath movie, would they give him the yellow boots? And of course, they probably wouldn't. But you saw that Wolverine movie with Deadpool, when Hugh Jackman was out there in the full yellow costume. I always said to people, right, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with it. Okay, so here, our light source is coming from the center of the image. And these boots are yellow, so they won't have as large areas of black, of spotting. Okay, let's have a quick look out. Zoom out and see how that leg's looking. Okay, good. That thigh muscle, I dare say it, it's quite George Perez. God damn. Now you see, you notice that some thick key lines on my character, yeah? Yeah, sometimes I like barked up key lines on drawing, especially on pencils. Because even if the inker doesn't exactly emulate what I've done, what it does do is it gives him or her, whoever's inking, it gives them a good idea of things that are in front or behind in terms of rendering. Because, you know, when you're penciling a full page of comic, the closer something is to the camera, generally speaking, the thicker the lines would be. The thicker the thicker you put the key line on something, the further forward in the panel that the item will become. Good. Now let's go to his pants, a dark blue. Again, if they made a movie of Black Goliath, would they make his costume dark blue or would they make it black? That is a good question. They'd probably make it black. I remember the first time I realized that black is often represented as dark blue in the comic books. Wonderful, wonderful interpretation though. Right, remember the light source is coming from the center of the image. Now this arm is underneath. So it's slightly in the shadow, you could say. Put a bit of light coming up here. And then a spot behind here. And you notice, I always leave an area of white between blacks and the edge. That's called an accent. That's a creative choice. You don't have to leave accents, but I do it again for separation. Because if you have a background on an image and there's something in the background that touches your image without an accent, sometimes the image can get lost. The image can get lost. Sometimes the item at the front, the character, can get lost against the background. Sometimes you want that to happen, depending, but generally speaking, I like the separation. Separation. Put some darkness in the boots. Okay, so our light source is coming from over here. Put a shadow here, bit of spotting here. Here again. Here I come again. Put a shadow in here. How lovely. I'm not sure if any of you were here this morning, but I was here at 1 a.m. in the morning for the regular show of Late Night Art Attack. It's at 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning. 1 a.m. on a Friday night. And I normally do that with my partner in crime, Raul Miss You. And Raul introduced me to something today that I didn't know was happening, which is the new Masters of the Universe movie. And Raul, he drew Man at Arms, which was his drawing was really, really nice. Very, very good. And in fact, why am I telling you? I can show you. So let me just do this. Do this big shadow on this leg. And I will give you a quick recap on what happened on my other show here on the Madness Entertainment Group, which was Late Night Art Attack, which went out this morning from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. So here's a recap on Late Night Art Attack from this morning. Let's have a look. First thing, I got to mute my music. I'm becoming a better producer, I'm not forgetting all this stuff. Right, so here's Late Night Art Attack, a recap from this morning. Me and Raul.
Previously on Late Night Art Attack.
So you saw there, Raul, he was drawing Man at Arms from the new He-Man movie, which looks not bad. Looks like it could be. It looks like it could be quite good. I mean, compared to some of the more recent fanboy stuff, That's looking not bad, I must say. And there you saw I was actually drawing a young lady. Her name is Clandestine, or Clandestine. She comes from my universe. And I mentioned earlier that I've done a book called How to Draw Comics from Thunderdome Comics. And that exercise you saw me draw there, that's actually because we got the Kickstarter we're doing at the moment. That's going to be one of the extra pages that we've now reached in the stretch goal. I added 4 pages, or editor Dan Sen, publisher, as one of the stretch goals. It was 4 more pages in the art book. So I decided to do one of the exercises live, which is how to draw clandestine, amongst other exercises you'll see in the book. So I'm going to run a trailer on that later. Hopefully you'll support the campaign over there on Kickstarter. It's called Thunder Zone Returns, and it's actually 5 books in the whole campaign. And what are the 5 books? The 5 books are Sumo Boy, Marshall Strong. There's Sumo Boy, there's Marshall Strong, there's My Supercross, there's Big House Blues, which is a great concept. It's a penitentiary. Big House Blues is about a penitentiary for supervillains. Very interesting concept. You can easily imagine, the Sci-Fi Channel version of it, or it's a cable station, a Netflix adaptation or something like that. Dan Sen, publisher, it's his concept, and it's a very, very good concept. And then the last book of the 5 is Weirdo. Again, that's another Dan Sen concept. Again, very good. Dan's on fire at the moment with his concepts. He's doing some good stuff. So please do check that out. Please do check that out over at Kickstarter. Right. So we've got our feet. Let's go up to his arm. So we put in our key line. See, now this arm is in front of the lower body. So we put the key line in on this as well. We push it to in front of the body. I know that I've done some pretty tight pencils here for Late Night Art Attack, but it is a nice treat to do this again because I've been inking a lot of my own stuff recently, in recent times. And very rarely do I get to this level of rendering because it's just not necessary. From the detail stage that you saw me just do, I would generally just start inking from that. Black Goliath's gloves are yellow, so they're not overtly dark. Now this is a flesh area here, so it doesn't have as much rendering as the dark blue areas. Remember, our light source is coming from where the point of impact of the punch would be if it landed. Always keep an eye on your light source. My favorite artist, as mentioned before, was Gil Kane. And I read an article in the book somewhere where he said he never worked with the light source at the beginning, which is fine. There are quite a few artists that don't work with light sources. I don't always have a light source on the drawings that I do. Oh, hang on, let me rephrase that. I may not have an obvious light source, but even my flattest of drawings, there's usually at least some degree of a light source in mind, which is normally from above, Because if you think about life in general, there's normally the sun above your head or a light coming from above. That's why, generally speaking, on light sources, most of the time your light source is going to come from above. If you've got something going on, though, in your storytelling that would dictate the light source is coming from somewhere else, then, of course, you draw accordingly. But what I'm saying is, I favor drawing, personally, I favor drawing with light sources. I think it makes the drawing more solid. But that's a personal preference. Comic art is quite a broad discipline thing. And the do's and don'ts can be very subjective. I'll tell you one thing that's definitely true as well. If you can't draw, right, let's say you can't draw. If you draw something with very competent light sources, I'm telling you, people will believe that you can draw. Okay, what I just said is a bit of an oxymoron, because if you've drawn something with a light source, that will imply that you definitely can draw. That will readily give that impression. But what I'm trying to say is, if your shapes are not the best, if your detail is not the best, but you've got some good light sourcing going on. Sorry, I'm going to put an accent at the edge of this costume. I'm not going to have the dark meat in the dark there. Yeah, if you've got some shapes defined with a bit of light, even if the shapes are off, if the light sourcing is relatively accurate, you will cast the illusion that you can draw. But as I said, I think it's a bit of an oxymoron. If a person can understand light sourcing, there's more of a likelihood that they can actually draw. Good. So the top of his costume up here is in the dark blue. So that's why it's got a bit more rendering. And the cutout where the chest area is. Put in some gradation hatching. As I said, the gradation style is different to the spikes style as described. And I don't know for sure, but I think some of the artists over at Image back in the early days, they may have designed this style out of necessity, because it does take less time to do it. It is faster. Okay, now he's got a big collar and the light source is coming from in front of him. But the shadow that I would generally put in here, I would do that with the coloring. And you can do it with the blacks, with the spotting, but I wouldn't go too overboard with that at this stage. Now his collar is actually yellow. So let me thicken that up, because that is in front. What I'm talking about, things that are in front, you want to push them forward. You give them a key line. Whoops. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. I just gave a perfect example of the teacher being an absolute novice. I did my spotting on my details layer. Look at that, it's on the wrong layer. Absolutely dreadful. Look, my first spotting, the legs were on the right layer, but my detail, I will separate that later on in time for next week's lesson. But let me go back to my spotting layer. And you see here, I drew through the object. Of course, we will not see the back of his shoulder. There. So thicken this out. The collar. It comes in. Meets the costume here. Good. Now I am going to put in yellow collar, but I'm going to put a shadow behind the head. Remember what I mentioned about rendering all in one direction? Keep this shadow constant. There. You can leave this kind of shadow to the coloring, but I want to exaggerate it there immediately. Now the light source is coming from over his shoulder, over there. So this part of the costume is still dark. Again, I'm going to keep the dark parts here and then put the gradation over that side. So the light source continues to come from over there. Good. Let's put in our key line for the upper body here. Good. Let's go over to this other arm, baby. We'll come back and we'll do the head last. Get those biceps going. Can't see the elbow from this angle. We just see a big forearm. Remember I mentioned his arms are actually exposed. So he's a black guy, so he has a certain degree of shading, but not as much as the dark blue area of the costume. I'm going to put a shadow behind there. Let's thicken up this bicep. So you notice that I just rotated my canvas, right? That is a bit of cheating, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of rotations. I've heard that in the animation industry, Walt Disney, apparently animators were urged not to rotate images, because it does in fact kind of slow you down. But you know how old craftsmen go through a lot of very, very difficult things, and as time goes by, those more weird pugilistic practices kind of disappear. People take the easy road out, if you like. So I'm not sure if putting an artist through that kind of pressure is really warranted now. But definitely, if you don't have to rotate paper, you will be faster at drawing. If you could draw everything at 90 degrees to yourself, definitely the whole thing will be faster. Okay, there's our key lines. His gloves are yellow, so not too much detail. There, putting a few sinews behind. Let's go across to the other. Whoops, let's put in just impression of a muscle there. Put a bit more detail there. Yeah, minimal detail because it's yellow. So the gloves, not too much detail. Now, something that I did forget is his mask comes down his neck because his chest is exposed. The top part of his chest is exposed. So I didn't put the mask line in there. Now we put that in. So let's go in. He's grimacing with wide open mouth but gripping teeth. So let's, whoops, my computer saving. Save. How are we doing for time? 25 minutes left, correct? Yes. We'll finish render Black Goliath, and then we'll see how much we can get done on Goliath. Okay, so here it is. Going through his throat. So the color is yellow, which is light, but we're going to throw a shadow in there because it's away from the light. And what we're going to do, we're going to use that shadow to push his face forward. There we go. Good. Now his mask is also dark blue, which is, you know, the dark render. One moment. Where's my mouse? Now I'm working at quite a low resolution. Well, it's not exactly a low resolution, but it's some of the pencils are a little bit fuzzy. But it's okay, it's okay, I can work with this. And there's the boundaries of the mask. So here, in this part of his body, this is skin. This is collarbone. So we can have some shadows here, but not as much as we've got on the mask area. We help depict the neck sinews, collarbone, top of the chest coming up. Then we get to the mask, and the shadows will be a bit more severe. So under the chin, we got that. Behind the ear, we have some creases from the tautness of the mask. It's coming into the light. Bit of a shadow of the head there. Accent at the back of the head. It's going to start coming into the light from behind the ear. So we leave an accent for the top of the mask as well. But they said not all artists would do that. So again, we've got the light source coming from the front. So I'm going to put a shadow on the lower face here. It comes to the cheekbone. Cheekbone come up. Now, let's get his expression going. So I'm going to make the light come in here. Now, this is not really a secondary light source. You take a gradient into another gradient, and you can almost get that kind of feeling going. Accentuate the expressions. Remember, the light source is coming from the center, which is to the left of the character. We can put in a shadow here. Make sure we get the expression really going. And we've lost some clarity on the image because when you, remember I made the drawing bigger? When you enlarge something in Clip Studio, you lose a bit of clarity. Things become less sharp. Hold on. Sorry, let's just readjust that eye. So again, a nose is projected. So I'm going to give that a bit of a key line. A mouth is an opening. So you make sure that's well pronounced. Shadow coming from the cheekbone, from the side of the face in general. Put a bit of shadow under the nose. Right, I'm going to put a shadow on the side of the head. Continue the expression. Then he's got a bit of a small afro. So let's thicken up the key lines of the hair. A wobbly line. And the light source is coming from over there. So I'm going to put over here in a shadow and there. So we fill this large area of black. Remember what I mentioned? Even though it's only penciling, of course you can put an X so an inker knows it's meant to be black, but for the purposes of this demo, this exercise, I'm going to fill in all the black, but I'm going to endeavor to keep all of the pencils going in one direction. It just kind of looks neater. Then a way of texturing the hair of black people is stippling, right? So as it comes out into the light, you stipple and you scribble. Very random, right? And the more you come towards the light, the more sparse the scribbling and the dotting. And then to get to the edge, you dot. And that gives you that texture of hair. There. Okay. So there is Black Goliath rendered. So you can clearly see the light source is coming from that side. I'm just going to put a little bit of a shadow on the arm here to accentuate that light source. Right, so this Black Goliath rendered. Next, let's render Old Goliath. So we come back here. We can switch off all of the construction. And we've got the detail. So like with Black Goliath, after detail, we did the spotting. So here, we make a layer. I'm going to switch off Black Goliath so we don't get confused. Spotting. And make this. We make the color of this layer dark gray again. Now I will endeavor to not ink anything on the wrong layer again. Okay, let me just tidy up this. Got a bit of drawing to the object here. Now Goliath, let's look at Goliath's color scheme. That will dictate how much blacks we put on in a given area. Now Black Goliath, similar to Goliath, in fact, just check a reference I have here. He's got light blue metallic things and dark blue areas. Quite dark, in fact, almost Black Panther-ish, you could say. And so I'm going to start. Oh, one thing with him is that you actually can't see his eyes. He's got like those Spider-Man kind of eyes. So I'm going to remove the eyes from here, from the sketch layer. Okay, so I'm going to start my spotting. We want the light source coming from below. So why not? I'm going to start. Should I start from the feet again? Okay, I'll start from the feet again. How long have we got? Still got 15 minutes. I've got a few trailers to run. So I'm going to go at this for another 5 minutes or so. Then we see what goodies we have in store. Or that I'm involved with. Okay, so the first thing we go for is keyline. And his pants, so not pants, his leggings are quite dark. The light source is coming from the center of the image. So I'm going to put in a shadow here. Make it come into a gradient here. Remember, I'm using the gradation. Whoops, That's horrible rendering. You don't want vertical or dead horizontal rendering. For some reason, our eyes seem to have a frequency. And if we see something going up and down, or left, right, our perception, we just don't like it. Our eyes don't like it. It's a bit dazzling. It can be a bit dazzling. Look at those boots, man. Boots are nice and big. I have to make a jingle for that. Gene Conan boots. Here we go. Dropping this in. His boots are light blue, so not as much rendering as the legging area. So we put a key line here because the boot is in front of the leg. Open this up. Good. They got very similar boots. Right, so this, the light source is coming from the center. So I'm going to put a shadow down here. It's a little bit of cross-hatching actually. And then, get back of the leg, spot here, then we bring this into the light. The kneecap. Okay, let's hide this away almost. Then it comes into the light. There's a muscle coming down here. Muscle coming up here, coming into the light. Remember, the light's coming from the center of the image. Bit of noise there. Get rid of that. Come up here. Again. Make sure we get that light source going. Render here. Let's get our key lines. If you work with a very good inker, of course, this sort of thing is you almost don't even have to think about it. I never forget the story that I was told by Joseph Rubinstein, who worked with the great Frank Miller on a lot of stuff. And him and another guy by the name of Klaus Janssen, two great inkers. They both can draw, of course. You know, for whatever reason, their careers took them towards inking, which is a vastly underrated part of the process. Yeah. And of course, Frank Miller knew exactly who to get to work with because it made his life a lot easier. If you're a penciler and you're working with a really good inker, your life is so much easier. And you were telling me that, like, some of the images that they would receive, you know, Frank would know exactly what he wanted, but a lot of the detail he didn't really have to put because they can literally see what he's thinking. But the brushwork of Rubinstein is absolutely brilliant. So the boots, as mentioned there, are light blue. They don't carry as much shadows. Now here's the tricky part, right? We put on Black Goliath. We want the light source. The light source, you could say the light source is coming from this area. Right, so if the light source is coming from, let's say the light source is coming from here, where the eyes are meeting contact and where a punch could be delivered. You've certainly got a situation now where if you look at Goliath's arm, this top arm, the light source is not coming from below. So we've got to take all of that into account. So before we finish the stream today, I'll start with that, shall I? Yeah. Okay, let's go up there. What's quite unique about Goliath's costume is he only has one wristband. His right arm has a wristband, but not his left. See this wrist? There's no wristband on it. Quite extraordinary. Now his arms are not covered. Goliath. One funky costume, man. God damn. So let's just do the key lines first. So you got skin. So there's not going to be a lot of rendering, but we still got to establish that the light source is coming from below. So the first thing we do is we put some spotting at the top and we bring our gradients down. Here. Shadow behind. See now, this shadow's got to be behind here because the light source is in this direction. Good, we render behind there. Get our key line thickened up here. Right, now this part of the costume. Got the metal brace going over the arm. Put a shadow at the back end. Again, the light source is coming from below. The costume goes over the shoulder. So again, I'm going to put a shadow behind here. And then bring the gradation down towards the light. How's this looking? Yes, this keeps our light source coming in for the lower part. Now the strap going across the chest, I'm going to give it a bit of a thickness to this. This is strap going across the chest. I'm going to thicken it. Yeah, I'm thickening it. This is one hell of a costume, I tell you. Get those abs and ribs in. Right now, that's the decoration on the belt. Very gladiator-like is Goliath's costume. Okay, let's get this bracelet. I've never heard the reason why he only has one bracelet. I don't think it was connected to his transitioning from like normal size. No, I think it's meant to be straps. I'm keeping it relatively simple. Remember what I mentioned before? I have a tendency of making my index fingers too large. Never forget your weak spots. Keep an eye on it. Make sure you're not making the same old mistakes you always make. I'm telling you, we all have an artistic footprint. There are things that we're liable to do for whatever reason. Okay, his hands are not covered. Only the bracelet. And again, I'm going to put the shadows towards the back. I'm going to put a shadow towards the back of this part here. Same here. Put a slight accent on the thickness. Take a bit of gradient down the back here. Okay, now we get start to define this arm. How long we got left? Oh, only 5 minutes. God damn. Okay, I'm just going to render this arm. Then we're going to wrap up. I'm going to play some trailers. Like I say my goodbyes. You've been a wonderful audience. Okay, let's see what we got. This is what we got. Okay, our rendering is coming in nicely. We'll finish this render next week. Save. It's saving. It's not easy. It's saving. And I will save a copy, a JPEG. So yeah, I will save it into the folder for this week. Because I will use it in the next trailer. Great. Jolly good. So thanks once again for joining me here on Supa-Saturdays Draw Along. You saw the breakdown of the two Goliaths from the skeleton up to where we are now, the rendering. We will continue with this next week, after which we will then do some inking and some coloring, which will probably see us through part of February. If you have any questions, please do send them to us at the Madness Entertainment Group. I'm going to run a few trailers now and all about some great stuff we've got coming as well at Roku. So for me, Jerome Hinds, all the way from Singapore to wherever you are in the world, thanks so much for watching. And I'll catch you later. Peace.
Thunderzone Comics returns. 5 all-new comics, Sumo Boy, Weirdo, Marshall Strong, Big House Blues, and Super Cross, plus a free how to draw characters from the Thunderzone. When you back all 5 new releases, the Kickstarter campaign is live now.
Thunderzone Comics!
Ozzy, what are you doing? Come and have a look at this lovely book that was sent over.
You're rapping in the perpendicular.
Oh, go on and spit the bat out your mouth. No one can understand you like that.
Say how 5 dentists and all.
Oh, well, that's not much better. Ozzy, why don't you sing to me? I can always understand you when you sing to me.
Fucking my brains. What is this my publisher sent me? Inked in black with art so sweet.
So what do you think? Do you like it?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
If you like stories about truth, honor, and justice, then you should check out MAGA Man. It is Donald Trump as many now see him, the defender of justice and a warrior for peace through strength. MAGA Man is an all-American style 22-page comic book, so get over to fundmycomic.com and support the culture of truth, honor, and justice. With MAGA Man, the most needed hero of all. MAGA Man.
A-C-K, panels out and comic book knowledge. 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 A-C-K, panels out and comic book knowledge.